Hello and a very warm welcome to the Total Saints podcast. We are the weekly Saints podcast, your home for all things Southampton Football Club. This podcast is being live streamed on Facebook, Twitter, Twitch and YouTube. Going to be checking your comments as we go through the show. So if you're watching live and you've got something to say, do get involved in the conversation. Now, our podcast is entirely supported by our loyal Patreon community. Without them, we couldn't make this show each week. And we've got 5 new patrons who have joined us in the last 7 days, which is great news. So a huge thank you and a massive welcome to Sasha Brown, Matt Gaudian and Matthew May in our Bobby Stokes tier. And joining our James Beattie tier this week, we've got Robert Higgins and John Byrne. And John asked if we could give his 10-year-old son, Sam, a shout because Sam loves the pod and listens every week. So, hey, Sam, we really appreciate your support, and I'll have a bit more on how you can join in just a minute. Coming up this week on the podcast, Russell Martin's first competitive game at St Mary's gave us plenty of goals and plenty more talking points. We'll try and sum up the madness of that 8-goal thriller. James Ward-Prowse is leaving Southampton after 20 years service, so we'll look at the void that he's going to leave and talk about what happens next for us. There was also a cup defeat at League 2 Gillingham. I guess we're going to have to talk about that at some point. And game 3 in the Championship is Plymouth away. Joe Bell from the Green and White podcast is going to join us later to help preview that one. My name's Martin Starke, and I'm joined this week by our regular contributors, Steve Grant, who's the owner of SaintsWeb, Glen Cour is the writer of the blog League 1-10, and Alfie House is the Saints reporter for the Southern Daily Echo. All underpinned by our TSP patrons. This is episode 239 of the Total Saints podcast. Now, as I said at the start of the show, a huge welcome to our new TSP patrons that have joined us in the last week. Their monthly contributions fully support the pod, and we couldn't make TSP without their support. We have 4 tiers ranging from £5 to £20 per month. And aside from supporting the pod each month, each of those tiers has different perks, like access to an ad-free version of the podcast. There's exclusive TSP t-shirts and merch bundles, of course, the TSP FPL, and access to some of the live events that we hold. If you just joined, it's not too late to sign up to the FPL. We're going to be checking back in on that later in the season, so do make sure you've signed up. And if you want to get involved in supporting TSP each month, head over to patreon.com/Total Saints Podcast for more details. All the links are in the podcast show notes and YouTube description. So let's talk about some football, shall we? Let's start with the big story of the week, which has got to be James Ward-Prowse. West Ham having agreed a fee to sign the Saints captain, £30 million by the looks of it. Glen, West Ham have been trying to sign Prowse for most of the summer. We've rejected a few offers. It felt inevitable since we were relegated that he would leave, and it appears now that that's finally going to happen.
Yeah, sad but inevitable consequence of the shower of everything that we were last season. When I accepted that we were going to get relegated in about January, February, at the same time you accept that your best players are going to leave, and Ward-Prowse is one of those, of course. So yeah, it was interesting because I don't think any of us could really see there was no obvious place for him to go. You know, who was going to pay the money and the wages and whose team would he improve. But West Ham, despite their sort of like poor performance in the league last year, they're playing European football next year, and I guess that's what swung it in the end in the mind of Ward-Prowse to go there, because he's always said that his favourite season for us was the seasons that we were in Europe, even though we didn't do particularly well. So no, I'm not surprised that appealed to him. It's it's relatively close to where he and his family are based. It's not a million miles away. It's not like it's Newcastle or somewhere like that. So I think it suits. I hope for his sake that he hits the ground running, because he obviously had a lot of credit in the bank here, built up over a long period of time. And if he had 5 bad games for us, then everyone would just say, well, okay, he'll get back on it soon. If he starts relatively badly for West Ham, especially as they see him as a replacement for, their fans seem to see him as a replacement for Declan Rice, which he clearly isn't. He's got a whole new fan base to win over, basically. So that's going to be a difficult thing for him. But good luck to him. I hold absolutely no ill will whatsoever for him leaving. He's given us 20 years from when he was a kid. He's been captain for the last 3 years. He's been in the team for roughly the last 10. So it doesn't annoy me anywhere. It doesn't annoy me at all. But it's not like, other academy graduates like Bale and Walcott, Callum Chambers, Oxlade-Chamberlain, people like that who left after half a season sort of thing.
Mm-hmm.
Guy's done his time. He's given us a load of good service, and yeah, fair play to him. And that's kind of it, really. I just feel like, it's a case of, as you said, sort of like the king is dead. What we got, long live the king. What are we going to do now? What we've got to replace him. And I mean, it was funny. We found a new penalty taker yesterday. We found a new player to take corners. We didn't quite find the stability he provides in the midfield.
Yeah, that was the biggest gap.
So that was where he was missed yesterday. But I'm sure we'll get that right. But yeah, fair play to him. 30 million feels like a kind of fairish valuation. I think we hoped for more, but I did always suspect that we would drop the fee a little bit because of the wages that he was on, and that's probably, we don't need to drop the fee for Romeo Lavia because we assume that he's not on massive wages. But with Prowse, he obviously is our highest earner, and rumor has it that there was no drop because of the relegation. So from purely a balance in the books type of thing, I'm not surprised he's moved on.
Steve, 30 million quid, potentially a player coming the other way on loan, an experienced Championship player who's played under Russell Martin before. Does it seem like good business all round to you?
I think it makes a lot of sense. I mean, whether it's good business, I don't know. I think we'll probably find out at the end of the season. If we've ended up still getting promoted, having sold our captain, then yeah, it'll have been brilliant business, and I think that sort of transition period will have been managed effectively. I mean, at this point, we just don't know. I mean, we saw yesterday the sort of giant holes in the midfield, but I'm not necessarily sure that was down to the sort of the fact that Ward-Prowse wasn't there. I think that was more system based. I think we didn't quite have the right players in the right positions in that midfield yesterday, which was noticeable when Shay Charles came on. Suddenly drops into that deep lying role in midfield, and all of a sudden we look a million times better. And he's just got that composure, very much like how Lavia did when he first broke into the team last season. You could tell that he had something about him, and he just had the awareness of what was going on around him. But yeah, I think in terms of Ward-Prowse going, 30 million is, I think it's par-ish. Ultimately, he's what, 29? So yeah, West Ham are going to have next to no resale value. I mean, I know West Ham are terrible at doing that anyway, but even by their sort of modern standards of trying to be sensible in the transfer market, I don't think there's a huge amount of sort of long-term upside for them. But if he comes into that team and he's able to hit the ground running, along with because they've got that Alcaraz fella from Ajax,
Alvarez,
who's going to be the holding midfielder. So I mean, at least they're not expecting Prowse to pick up that role, because then you'd have serious problems, I think. But with those two, I mean, yeah, they probably cover all of Declan Rice's kind of attributes, but that's two players swapping for one. You're gonna lose something somewhere. So I'm intrigued to see how David Moyes fits all that in. It's going to be an interesting month there, I think.
Yeah. And Alfie, Jason Wilcox said to you that the deals will happen if they suit all parties. They ideally would have wanted to keep him. He wanted to go. You can't begrudge him for that. So it seems like that was a deal that suits perhaps both parties. And I guess from the manager's point of view, it's just nice to draw a line under it and move on.
Yeah, I think that probably out of the deals they do this summer will probably be the one that favours them the least, I'd imagine. And that's probably because it's it's purely the captain's choice whether he wants to leave or not, I think, at this point. Although they wouldn't accept 20 million as the first bid from West Ham, they wouldn't accept that. I think they probably knew that if Ward-Prowse did want to leave, which given by Russell Martin told us that he wants to get back in the England squad and break the Premier League free kick record effectively, then it probably was his choice. So it's about as good as it could be. And yeah, I think Russell was really honest about it. I don't know if the club wanted him to talk about it.
I was surprised at how honest he was about it in that press conference.
That's Russell Martin, isn't it? Yeah. He's been like that the whole time, to be fair, and it's not just us saying it because he's nice to us. He tells you every answer, any question you ask, and I'm sure that there'll be some things that he hides, but he is a really honest person. I don't know if the club wanted him to talk about it, but straight away he said, yeah, he's going to be really hard to replace. Jack Stevens is going to be a new captain, confirmed that officially. So yeah, it's about drawing the line, and now hopefully they can get some people in. And Flynn Downs is the first one of those. Hopefully that'll be completed tomorrow or the day after. It's not done yet by any means, but
do you think someone could hijack that? Because that was one of the rumours this week that someone might come in.
I don't know. I don't know how West Ham do their business, but I'd like to think that if they're taking Southampton's captain for a decent price for both clubs, I'd like to think that they would try and encourage Flynn to make that move back to. And I think Flynn would probably want to play under Russell Martin. I don't know him. I never spoke to him, but I think that the familiarity will help him succeed in the Championship again.
Really fine, upstanding, honest owners at West Ham. No worries.
There was a cracking game of football yesterday. Adam Armstrong scoring a 97th minute penalty to salvage a draw against Norwich. First home game of the new season. 4-4 the final score. Glen, my take was still as bad as defending as last season, but at least maybe this year we might score a few. What was your thoughts coming away from the ground yesterday?
Oh, it was absolutely mental, wasn't it? It was just a mad game from start to finish. And, I mean, if you discount the 4-4 with Liverpool in the last game of the season, because that was effectively a glorified friendly, wasn't it? Because we were already down and they had nothing to play for. It's the most entertaining game going back to the Ronald Koeman era. It was just brilliant to watch. You only get entertaining games like that if the defences are shambolic, and ours was awful, and Norwich were almost as bad. So that was what I tend to watch defensive play more than attacking play for some reason. That's just me. But yeah, I mean, some of it. I mean, I was just shaking my head all the way through it at some of the defending. The first Norwich goal in particular. If you break it down, the ball gets played to Ashley Barnes. No one. Stevens is kind of there, but he doesn't pressure him. He's allowed to bring it down, take a touch, knock it wide to the unmarked Stacey, who Edozie has not tracked. Manning has not got out to him. Stacey's been allowed to take a touch, cross it to the back post. Bednarek has lost Sargent, who heads it into an empty net from 2 yards. It's like, that's just horrible. That's so many people not doing their job. And
it's very last year, isn't it? Very last season. For
well, I mean, I think
last 5 years.
Yeah, but, I mean, last year we had a different problem in that we coughed up the odd bad goal. But in the main, the stats say that our defending wasn't actually that bad. We had problems in goal. But yeah, you can look at that. But it was just fantastic going forward. I just love the way we flooded forward, and it was just chaotic. I mean, we saw a little bit of this in the we saw it coming. I think the pre-season game in pre-season friendly against Reading. Where we saw all the midfield flying forward. Will Smallbone is nominally defensive midfielder. He's okay he makes a lot of interceptions in sort of tight areas, but if the game gets strung out and we get broken on, he's not quick enough, and he's not sort of defensive minded enough to be able to cover that whole area on his own. So then it comes down to the defenders, and all our defenders were making horrendous errors yesterday as well. But our attacking play was great, and the commitment to attack when we were behind 3 times, the spirit that we showed to get back into it, 3 times was tremendous. But you won't get many teams
That was so nice, wasn't it? So nice.
Yeah, it's great. I mean, I went on about it last year, that Theo Walcott goal that got disallowed at Brighton. That was the final straw for me with VAR, and it's been brilliant so far in the 2 games that we've had. And I think the EFL should resist with every breath in its body the if they think about trying to have VAR, because the EFL seems to be for the fans, the Premier League is for the TV audiences.
They haven't got the officials. I don't think they'd ever be able to do it. They haven't got the numbers.
No, and that's as good a reason as any.
Long may that continue.
Yeah, we'll get some rubbish decisions, of course we will. But to be honest, I enjoyed the game so much yesterday, even though we didn't win. That that's what it's about. It's about the fans' experience in the ground, and that was brilliant.
And the rubbish decisions give us plenty to talk about afterwards. So
absolutely.
That's. Steve, we said last week there's been plenty of decent games between the 2 sides over the years, but what did you make of that yesterday? Because we could have won it at the end as well.
Yeah, I mean, it was interesting. I watched the highlights back again earlier, and on the replay from behind the goal, when you see that Alcaraz chance in the 99th minute, actually, if he does what I've seen him do before, I think the Arsenal goal where he scored early doors, he kind of gave the keeper the eyes and went across him, and I think if he does that again in this situation, Gunn's got no chance because there's 2 defenders blocking his line of vision. But because he's gone the other side, it's a smaller margin for error, unfortunately. So yes, I mean, if you're splitting hairs, that's a missed opportunity to have beaten them 5-4 for the second time in the last 30 years. But yeah, I mean that game was just absolutely mental, wasn't it? And yeah, completely agree with Glenn that that's a game that doesn't happen if both teams are set up with sort of a proper defensive structure. And yeah, we just didn't have that in the slightest. I think as I said earlier, Shay Charles showed in that little cameo that I think he's going to be the guy going forward who is going to have that role, and then you're going to be picking 2 from whoever's left for the other 3 midfield places, I think,
or whoever comes in.
I mean, obviously Flynn Downs is heavily linked from West Ham as, I mean, it's not a proper make weight in the deal, but it's as a separate move to come in on loan, and he knows the system and has played under Martin before, so yeah, it should hit the ground running. But I mean, there's no guarantee that he gets into that side at the moment. Which can only be a good thing, I think, if you've got genuine competition for places. I mean, we obviously know there's one position at the moment that we don't have that. And I mean, Bazunu wasn't at fault for any of the goals yesterday, but you still sense that there is likely a problem on the horizon at some point. I mean, he was, as I say, he was fine yesterday. Claimed a couple of crosses when needed. Made that good save down the striker's feet in the second half. So it's not panic stations by any stretch of the imagination there. But yeah, it's something that's probably going to have to be kept an eye on. But I've seen links that supposedly Palace want McCarthy, which, I mean, if they do, I will happily
He must have started those
drive
himself,
down to
surely.
Southampton and give him a lift back up here to Croydon all by myself. I'm absolutely on board with this.
You can stay in your spare room, Steve.
No, you're right.
Alfie, I mean, it's a difficult one to sum up yesterday. I mean, should it be a case we're disappointed we didn't get the 3 points in a home game, or is it a case of, well, at least we didn't lose?
Yeah, I mean, I think Russell Martin after the game said that he'd have been really, really angry if they had lost. I think he was pretty satisfied that a point was probably the right result. I agree with Stephen Glenn that when I look at a back four of Walker, Peters, Bednarek, Stevens, and Manning in the Championship, I just don't think that's going to be a problem. But as it happened, it wasn't a back four, was it at all? Really, it was a back two, and I think it was actually mostly what's in front. I know Steve has said that doesn't necessarily think the Ward-Prowse not being there was the problem, but I do think that Will Smallburn was excellent at Sheffield Wednesday in that, whatever you want to call it, number 6 or holding role. But he was playing against a team that were not making any efforts to come out. They were sitting back 10 men behind the ball a lot of the time. Whereas credit to Norwich, I thought they were really brave. Pushing players forward. They left 2 powerful forwards at the top end of the pitch every single time, and that was why Stevens and Bednarek had a bit of a nightmare, because they didn't have the fullbacks to support them when they probably were going man for man most of the game. And then Shea Charles, as been mentioned, really impressive, came on and just stopped that transition, slowed it down a little bit and was able to pick off those counters, and that was superb. One thing that David Wagner said after the match, though, was that they spoke about the fact that this Southampton team is small. There's nobody really imposing or big in the team, and the teams are cottoning onto that now, and they're targeting set pieces. And this Andreas Georgeson guy's got a big job on his hands, because teams are noticing it. And although Will Smallburn and Ryan Manning, their offensive corners are really good, once again they're not dealing with the Norwich ones. But yeah, I really enjoyed the fact it was a good ovation at the end. To be fair, because when you can see 4 goals at home, Ryan Manning's chucked one into the back of his own net effectively, no marking for the header, set piece goal again, and to be fair, 1-1 goal. I did worry that would be not what the supporters wanted. Obviously it's not, but the ovation at the end was nice. It was a signal that this is a lot better than losing 1 every week. I think everyone agrees with that. I think there was a couple of altercations in the northern end apparently that some people were booing and just saying that it's a defensive horror show, and they're absolutely right. But I think the vast majority of people think this is the way forward.
Yeah, well, if there's a lot of new season ticket holders, new families going along for the first time because they can suddenly afford it, or that the games are at a more favourable time, then they've come away yesterday thinking this is brilliant. I'm glad we've got tickets for this. Glenn, let's just touch on that defensive and that back four. That is our back four by the sounds of it to stay. I know, like Armel Bella-Kotchap is off, but when Jack Stevens is named captain, you think that means he's a nailed-on starter. So is it more about that defensive midfielder and getting that right? That's going to be the key, and who sits in front of them.
Yeah, you have to get the midfield structure right. And as Steve and Alfie both said, with Shea Charles made quite a big difference in the second half. You think in the second half we only conceded 1 goal, and that was the lovely cushion set up by Ryan Manning. But so Norwich didn't cause us as many problems in the second half. It was bordering on suicidal yesterday, some of it, because, as Alfie said, they left 2 guys up front. So it stands to reason you need 3 players back. You can't just go 2 on 2. I mean, most teams play with 1 up, don't they? So you can possibly get away with playing, 2 against 1 centre forward, and the fullbacks can be a little bit more free. But yeah, I mean, there should have been someone there, and as our captain is a centre back, you would hope that he was screaming at Manning and Walker Peters to actually hold their positions a little bit, to give them some sort of cover. But I just thought we weren't aggressive enough with our defending. And that first goal I described, I mean, you can't let 33-year-old slow Ashley Barnes bring the ball down and take his time and knock it off. That's he didn't even knock it off first time. He took a touch. You've got to be in on his touch. Get him, and that was when Salisu and Bella-Kotchap were playing well for that brief period at the start of last season. That is what they were doing. Yeah, they were they were right into the attackers. Bednarek can do that, but he didn't yesterday. He had a bit of a beast in the first half. I know he scored, but he looked way off it in the first half. So they have to get that defensive structure right. I mean, Prowse not being there meant that, we have Will Smallburn as the nominal defensive midfielder. You got Alcaraz and Stuart Armstrong. They don't track runners at all, the pair of them, not at all. So anyone running through. Nathan Teller does a decent job tracking back. Sam Adozie still has a bit to learn, I think, and that was something from the first goal as well.
It's worth mentioning.
Adam Armstrong with the best bit of defensive work by the way.
Yeah, that was
Absolutely.
quality.
That
Yeah.
50-yard sprint back and sliding challenge.
And Russell did credit that after the game as well. He pointed that out to us and made sure that we reported on that. It's worth mentioning that they probably will be forced into a midfield change next week anyway, because Will Smoburn's obviously gone off with a whack to the ankle and he's having a scan at some point in the next couple of days. So he might be out for a week or two, or hopefully not more. So they might be forced into that change anyway. We might be looking at Charles, Stewie and Charlie again. And we'll see how that goes.
And it's going to be a big miss. Steve, Jack Stephens, first game as new captain, probably not the result he would have wanted. I guess he would have been hoping for 3 points at home. But as we said, that means he's probably a nailed on starter now. Obvious choice for captain or just slim pickings? There's not a lot of other people that are jumping out at the moment.
How about both? I think ultimately he's the obvious choice just from the way he conducts himself on the pitch. He is the defensive organizer, and by all accounts is the same in the dressing room and at Staplewood. That he is kind of a leader. The problem I've certainly had in the past, and I've said as much on countless occasions, is that while he's brilliant at organising others, he's less competent at organising himself at times, and that's kind of where he's got to step up. You'll get away with it a lot more in the Championship than you will do in the Premier League, but we're already seeing that teams are taking advantage of us being a little bit slack at the back. Ultimately, I think a lot of the problem is, as Alfie pointed out, that David Wagner said, that we're a small team. We've literally, our two centre backs are 6'1" and 6'2". Our goalkeeper, I think, is 6'2". And then, assuming Shay Charles comes into the starting lineup, he's 6'3". Other than that, we are short, and we just don't have height. Both our fullbacks are 5'6". One of our replacement fullback options is 5'6". And then you've got a load of diminutive sort of wide attacking players. You bring Shay Adams into the team, which I assume will probably happen next week, with Adozie presumably out for a bit, with the injury that forced him off yesterday. And all of a sudden you've then got four players who are competent in the air. That automatically, that obviously doubles the number that we had in the first half yesterday. So that gives you a better grounding. And it's then when you've got that competence and just physical attributes, really, then you can start working on what your best defensive system is. I've seen people saying, "Oh, well, it's because we're zonal marking." No, it's not. It's because we're a team of midgets. We're all 5'8", 5'9", and nobody can jump above the 6'4" centre back that the opposition's got. That they're throwing forward for every set piece. Yeah. That's the problem. It's not even that we're leaving them unmarked, because even if they were challenged, that would still be happening. And I think, on the third goal, it's just, that's not even been a particularly tall guy won the header. That's just somebody not doing their job. There's absolutely no way that a defensive system coached by any manager at any sort of level is instructing their players to leave a guy in with a 5-yard radius in sort of on the edge of the 6-yard box. That's just madness. So someone, don't know who it is, Teller, I think, is the closest player to him, but I'm not sure. I can't imagine that he was assigned to pick anybody up there. They'll obviously go back and analyse that and work out who's to blame. But I'm sure the players will know exactly who should have been at least somewhere vaguely near him when he.
As we say, the new set piece coach is going to certainly earn his money, isn't he?
Well, that's the hardest job in the world. That is.
He's going to resign on day one. He's going to meet Juan Larios and go, "No, I'm going." See ya.
I'm going to ask you about.
At least we scored from a set piece today.
We did. Well, that's what I was going to say. I'm going to ask you about Player of the Week in just a moment. But Glenn, I just wanted to touch on the set plays and things yesterday, because look, Prowse, fantastic. And as we said earlier on, we wish him well. But actually, it was nice to see a little bit of variation, other people getting involved in the corners. We're going to see that with the free kicks now. And I don't know, does he score 2 penalties in a game? It was nice to see. They weren't brilliant penalties, but it was nice to see someone stepping up with a bit of confidence and going, "Do you know what? I think he's going to nail that."
Yeah, Adam Armstrong when he picked up the ball for the first one, I thought, oh, fair enough. Because again, you're looking around and thinking, slim pickings here. Who fancies it? Adam Armstrong clearly wants to take it. And he buried it. I was quite confident he was going to bury it because of who the opposition goalkeeper was. Because
your old friend.
Yeah. Well, I also remember him in that penalty shootout where he basically collapsed in the corner 6 times and didn't get near any of them. So I was quite confident with the first one, and I was very confident with the second one for the same reason, because it's not in his locker to have a great game at St Mary's. So no, I was happy that it's good for Adam Armstrong. It'd be good for his confidence. I'd still like to see, you want to see a goal from open play, don't you? That doesn't just fly off the back of his head. You want to see him being put through, taking on the last man and smashing it in, and then there's obviously, his confidence has obviously taken a batter in the last couple of years, and however the goals go in, it's going to build him up, and happy days. He will hopefully carry on scoring. With regards to the corners and stuff, when Ryan Manning went over and took them from the left-hand side, they were really from the right-hand side. Sorry, they were really dangerous. I really liked it, and it annoyed me in the last minute when Sam Ammo took one, and he tried to take it left-footed, and it was rubbish. It didn't get above knee height, and I thought, I think it was 4-4 at the time, but I think they just wanted the nearest player to take it because they were running out of time, sort of thing.
What game was it where Ryan Manning delivered a free kick in pre-season? It was a really good ball.
The Bournemouth one, wasn't it? Yeah.
So he's obviously got it in his locker.
Yeah. So they got. I mean, Smallbone hit a couple of good ones. He hit a couple of duff ones from the other side. But yeah, I mean, it's like when you when you clear out certain players, other players can suddenly have their chance to shine. I mean, when Charlie Alcaraz signed his sort of YouTube compilation videos, there was a few free kicks in there. So, perhaps he's the man who's going to take on that when we get one around the edge of the box. So yeah, I'm happy with the way things have worked out, and we have no choice, so we have to find someone else.
Absolutely. So TSP Player of the Week then, before we move on to the Plymouth game, I think Adam Armstrong, for me, just scoring that penalty in the 97th minute or 96th minute, whatever it was, and also that tackle. Alfie, I know we were talking about your player ratings. Is it the same for you or anybody else that stood out this week?
Yeah, I think I can't actually remember the top of my head. It's quite a busy period doing those, but I think Adam Armstrong was 8 for me out of 10, and probably the highest rated player. So at the end of the day, he scored 2 penalties, which is not an easy task. Kane couldn't do it in the World Cup quarterfinal, otherwise we'd been all dancing around the streets. But he did it, and that tackle, like you say, was unbelievable. So yeah, Adam Armstrong, and hopefully build up his confidence. I got an update to my stat as well, Stephen Glen. It's now 10 goals in his last 5 championship appearances.
Not bad.
Not bad.
The form.
And both, do you both agree, Steve, Glenn, for Player of the Week, Adam Armstrong, or anybody else that's jumped out for you?
Yeah, I think so. I mean, I think you can. I think he's the guy that's had the obvious impact with the goals. I think you could make claims that quite a few other players had like 10-15 minute bursts of input, of sort of real impact. Like Alcaraz came alive in the last 15 minutes of the game, whereas the first hour or so he was largely anonymous. Stu Armstrong was good in the first half, but faded sort of quite a lot in the second, as he kind of tends to do in games where he starts. Smallbone was kind of all right first 20-25 minutes. Then Norwich kind of got a bit of a handle on him. And obviously Charles came on last 20 or so and looked very good. So there's a case for a number of players, but I think Armstrong was the one that kind of had that impact across the whole 90 minutes, really.
Glenn, do you agree?
If I was so Player of the Week, does that include the Gillingham game? Because if it does, well, Alex McCarthy, obviously, he was great.
Now that means we're going to have to put the Twitter poll: Adam Armstrong or Alex McCarthy.
That's a big dirty lie. I mean, no, if you are including the Gillingham game, then Sam Amoyor was great in that game. He was the only one who was, and he did well in his 10 minutes that he came on yesterday. So I mentioned him. I would also, from yesterday, include Che Adams, because I thought he made quite a big difference when he came on. Just slightly more of a physical presence against Gibson and Who's the other guy? Duffy. So I think that though that substitution probably wouldn't have been made at that time without the injury, I thought it was, as substitutions go, I thought that was spot on, and it did sort of majorly change the direction of travel of the game. So yeah, if I was going to pick anyone from yesterday, anyone other than Adam Armstrong, it would be Che Adams.
Nice. Okay, thank you for that. Well, Saints travel to Devon this weekend to face newly promoted Plymouth Argyle. Joining us to help preview that game is Joe Bell from the Green and White podcast. Hi, Joe. Thanks for joining us.
Evening, gents. We all good?
Yeah, very good. A good point at Watford at the weekend, I guess. How's life in the Championship been so far? I think, is it 4 points from 2 games?
It's easy, this Championship, like, isn't it? Yeah, no, it's been a dream start, really. We obviously got the big 3 points on the opening day against Huddersfield, and we were going to Watford really with a touch of apprehension, I suppose, amongst the fan base. Everyone was going, this was the day that we'd really get a sense of what the Championship was like. And I mean, we defended for our lives. Watford had a large chunk of the game, as you'd expect, with the quality they've got in their side. But we were more than a match for them, particularly second half. If truth be told, although they registered a large number of shots, the best chances in the game fell to us. One in particular with about 20 minutes to go. So it's pleasing. It's been a great first week. Obviously, the 4 points and progression in the cup. So yeah, I think it's settled everyone's nerves a little bit about the level that we've come into.
Yeah, and progression in the cup's not for everyone. The manager's saying that he might be bringing in a striker before the end of the transfer window. Is there still a bit of business you'd like to be seen done?
Yeah, I'm not sure it's a might. I think it's a necessity, really. We've only got 2 up there at the moment. We've got Ryan Hardy, who's been our top goal scorer now for a couple of years, and we've got a young lad we brought in from Wellington Phoenix last year, Ben Wayne, who looks a very good, promising talent. But unfortunately, we're not going to be able to succeed with just 2. So we are looking for another centre forward. The hope is that we might try and get one in this week. It will be a loan. We've obviously spent a little bit of cash already, which is rather uncharacteristic, but that's the signs of the club and where we are now. So
have you heard of somebody called Sekou Mara, Joe?
I've not, no.
He could be a good fit for you.
Having been backstage for the last 10 minutes, I think I'll pass and I'll focus on the players we're linked with. But yeah, look, we'll see what comes of it. I think Schumacher's been fairly open that he wants somebody, if he can, with a bit of Championship experience. I know that's a little bit tricky to come by on a loan deal, but we've worked some magic so far this transfer window. So hopefully we've got a bit of gold dust left up our sleeves.
We've talked about the momentum as well with the clubs that get promoted. Are you feeling that? Is there a sense that there is still that momentum and everyone's still quite buzzing? And I guess the good start would have helped if they stuck to the principles that got them out of League One?
Yeah, I think the momentum's been building now for a couple of seasons. I don't think it's something that came about last year. I mean, the year before, we obviously had a fantastic season. Any side who misses out on the playoffs with 80 points can feel pretty hard done by. They didn't let it affect them last year. And I mean, we were outstanding all year. Constantly getting knocked back every week in the media that, oh, we won't last, they'll fall away. And we didn't drop out at the bottom, the top 2 after, I think it was September the 16th or something. So we were always up there. The momentum is very key at home. I think in our last 47 league games, we've lost 7. So, good luck on Saturday. You're coming to a place that not many teams have much joy. And we're certainly not going to make it easy for you. But yeah, the place is buzzing. The city is buzzing. I mean, this is the first year, certainly since I've been supporting the club, that we've had a waiting list for season tickets. The place is selling out every week. We're going to sell out all our allocations every week on the road. It's refreshing to walk through the city centre and see green shirts and white shirts and not the reds of Liverpool's and Manchester United.
I can imagine, yeah.
It's a real sign of the times, and it's all thanks to our chairman Simon Hallett. He's put a great board underneath him in place. And as I say, it's been 4 or 5 years in the making, but we're reaping the benefits of it now, certainly.
Glen, are you looking forward to this one? I think it was 2011 that we played them last. That was a couple of goals for Ricky Lambert when we were kind of like flying high, and I think 3-1 the final score. But it should be a good game on Saturday.
Yeah, that was the game that basically got us up, wasn't it, into the
and relegated
championship?
them.
Yeah, it got us.
You owe us one.
Yeah, I'm looking forward to this game. It's always nice to play teams that you haven't played for a long time, and from what I've seen of Argyle, it's only really this year, and there was quite a lot of highlights of their game against Huddersfield. Looked a decent side who try and play, which is nice. Obviously, very promising manager who we were briefly linked with. I don't know if that was media driven or whether that was actually a thing.
Alfie's fault.
Yeah, probably Alfie's fault. That's probably the Athletic. Boo. So I like the fact that they're trying to do things a different way. I mean, Stephen Schumacher, he was a sort of lowish profile player, League One, League Two. He's still younger than 40, which grates horribly with me. So it's two managers who are much younger than I am. And the club's obviously got something about it at the moment. A general upward trend, as you say, for 4 or 5 years. Remember you knocking Pompey out the playoffs a couple of years ago. That was brilliant as well. All good. So I'm really looking forward to the game. It'll be an interesting one for us because we had Sheffield Wednesday, who were obviously in League One last year in the first game, and that I think it's tough going to newly promoted sides away from home very early in the season, and obviously Argyle have had a good start, so it's going to be an interesting game. But yeah, like I say, looking forward to it, and be interesting to see if you can handle our attacking play. But if you've got any set pieces that you're certainly going to have some joy, because we don't appear to have a clue. So it should be a very entertaining game one way or another.
What are the aspirations, the expectations for the season, Joe? Is it just to start one and see how it goes, or are you looking to kind of really sort of cement themselves in the division?
It's pretty clear from everyone up there. It's a progression plan. So first year is always about consolidate, cement your place in the division, build from that moving forward. If the season ended now, I'd obviously be delighted, and it'd be a bit of a whirlwind. But yeah, I mean, look, I think that it's pretty public knowledge that our budget is a bottom third of the division budget. We feel like we've utilised it quite well. Obviously, with the players we've brought back, as well as some of the ones we've brought in. So the ambitions are to survive. No one's hiding away from that. But certainly from what we've seen, in particular yesterday as well, because we had to show a lot of different characteristics yesterday to what we did against Huddersfield. We had to sit in for periods of the game. We had to throw bodies on the line. We had to really work hard for the point. And we haven't had to do that the last couple of years, obviously, with the seasons we've had. So I think if anyone, certainly neutrals, didn't believe that we belonged at this level before yesterday, go back and watch that game, because that proved to everyone that we do. We're not here to make the numbers up. We are going to be a very competitive side. Of course, there are going to be games that we come up unstuck. We're going up against huge football clubs with great resources. I keep telling people it's a mini Premier League that we've come into. It's rather typical of Argyle that the one year we finally get back to the Championship, it proves that it's the hardest Championship there's been for a long time. So we're going to make it difficult for ourselves, but we're going to enjoy it. As I say, we're not here to make up the numbers. I think we can really surprise a few people looking at some of the 1 to 24 predictions that were put out.
The budgets is an interesting thing, Steve. I mean, on paper, you think that we should do all right here, but it's going to be a tough game, isn't it? A bit different to the Sheffield Wednesday one.
Yeah, I think hindsight will judge that Sheffield Wednesday game as a game against one of the weaker teams in the division. I think both Plymouth and Ipswich, from what I've seen so far, look a complete different proposition. They both have a hell of a lot of momentum. I mean, obviously Wednesday had their ridiculous playoff run, which we discussed at the sort of before that game. But all the nonsense that they've had in the summer, and they just don't look a very good team, or a team that's got any sort of confidence in themselves. Whereas Plymouth and Ipswich have both started excellently. I mean, Plymouth look solid at the back, which is a new. That's going to be a new test for us because we've not played anyone with a good defence yet. Wednesday were terrible at the back, and realistically we should have won that game by more. And obviously we scored 4 yesterday. Should have had 1 or 2 more. So that's going to be interesting to see how we get through a team that's actually well organised. Defensively, I mean, obviously we have our stated problems, and we've got to kind of muddle our way through it until we've got to a stage where we're comfortable and we know what we're doing. But it's a case of kind of winging it a little bit and hoping that our attacking assets are able to. I mean, we're basically going to try and Keegan it, aren't we, for at least until the end of August, and then kind of assess it and see
There's
how
a reference
the
for
land
the
lies.
kids.
So I mean, I think ultimately most of our games are going to be quite fun to watch. I mean, as we've seen so far, I mean, less said about Tuesday the better, but the 2 league games so far have been good fun. And to be honest, the way Plymouth played against Huddersfield, I've not seen anything from the Watford game, but the way they played against Huddersfield off those highlights on the ITV show, I think it's going to be an open game, and I mean, I'd be very surprised if it's low scoring.
Yeah, Joe, I'm going to ask you for a score prediction in just a moment. Alfie, despite the early kickoff, I mean, it should be a great atmosphere. I don't know, are you going to leave in the middle of the night, or if you get to go down the day before? You must be looking forward to this trip.
Yeah, I'm looking forward to it a lot. Like I say, sold out by what Joe says in the home end, sold out in the away end very quickly as well. It's going to be a phenomenal atmosphere. On a personal note, it's a bit annoying because the Premier League 2 first home game is on Friday night at Snow Stadium, and I want to try and beat every home 21's game. So I'll be doing that game until about 11 midnight that night, and then driving up to Plymouth at like 5 or 6 in the morning, whatever it takes. So that won't be ideal. But also, just for supporters, it adds on a potential 3-figure sum, doesn't it? If you want to go up on the Friday. I mean, I think Glen's even debating whether you could or couldn't go because, as a result of being on Friday, no trains and stuff. So it's a bit of a shame. I think, that's the EFL.
Yeah, trains were kind of virtually killed by the kickoff being moved. So so it's driving or nothing really.
But it is going to be an unbelievable atmosphere, and like Russell Martin's obviously not going to change the way that Southampton plays. So maybe Joe can tell us a bit more potentially about how Plymouth are going to deal with that. But they're going to try and dominate them on their home part. They're going to absolutely try and play them off the park, and it's going to be a good contest.
Is set pieces the key, do you think, Joe? Because I don't know if you've seen any of the Southampton highlights, but I think there was a point yesterday where we'd faced 4 shots on target and all 4 of them had gone in. So the gaps are there if you can exploit them.
We had a running joke on our podcast all the way through last year how many games it had been since we'd scored a set piece goal, and we finally got one around March time. I mean we're very hit and miss when it comes to our set pieces, I've got to say. We're one of very few teams who try and keep the ball in play if we can, so there's not too many set pieces. But interesting what you guys were saying there about the Sheffield Wednesday game and what Alfie just said there about how Argyle are going to try and combat what is likely to be Southampton seeing a fair chunk of the possession. I don't think anyone's blinkered to not expect that, even though it's on our home turf. And, we're not going to change our style. We're not suddenly going to switch to 7 at the back here and sit in a low block and try and scrape a point. This is our home game. We've lost 3 times last year. As I said, we've only lost 7 games in the last 47. We're going to really fancy this in front of the cameras, full house. Like we did against Huddersfield, and that will be an interesting matchup, really, because what you guys were saying there about your back 4, I mean, we set up with a front 3, but at times it can be a 4 or 5 that flood forward when we're on the attack and we've got the wind behind us. So they pop up in different positions as well. Don't get too set on what you see on a team sheet. They'll be all over the place throughout the 90 minutes. But it is a properly good game. This, I think, as you say, it's 2 sides who like to play proper football. They get it down. Big fan of Russell Martin and the way his teams play, but do not expect us to be as poor as Sheffield Wednesday were and just let you have it. That's not going to happen. We are going to try our best to get in your faces and hassle you. And if we pay the price, we pay the price. But this is the model that's got us to where we are now. So we're not going to abandon it just for one 90-minute game. Or a 112-minute game.
Well, yeah,
however
however long. Yeah, sounds like it could be a good one. Can I just get a score prediction from you, Joe, before you go, if you don't mind?
Yeah, I think, as I say, I expect Southampton to see a fair chunk of the play, similar to what Watford did yesterday. But equally, when we got the ball, we caused Watford real problems, and I think it surprised them a little bit. We're on our home patch. We've got this record. It's going to sound really boisterous. I can't see us being beat, if I'm honest, just because of how we play at home. And with your leaky defence, obviously shipping 4, if we can nick one at a set piece, I'll be absolutely delighted. But our height isn't really our strength. I think the tallest player bar the keeper, who's 6'7" or something. I'd be surprised if he's coming up for a corner in the 10th minute or something. But I think our next tallest player is 6'2", 6'3". So I don't think you'll have a problem with being outdone in the height. 2-1 Argyle. I think if we can keep it tight for as long as we can, then we've got so many options coming off the bench at the moment. It's crazy, and particularly if we can get another striker in, that will only help that. But yeah, 2-1 Argyle with us. The trend seems to be we'll go 2-0 up and then concede one, and then it'll be squeaky bum time. But if we can have a good afternoon, then I'll be absolutely delighted. And what a start that would be to our season.
All right, let's go around the rest of the screen. Steve, your score prediction, please.
Yeah, I mean, this is arguably our biggest test so far, I think. I mean, Norwich, I think, were a fairly known quantity. And we still made a bit of a pig's ear of things at times. I mean, as I say, I think it'll be tight, but I think it's weird. It's going to be a tight game, but an open game. So tight result, but stupidly open game. Probably an insane pace, I would imagine. Both teams seem to quite, as Joe said, Plymouth like to keep the ball in play. We certainly do as well. So actually, don't think there'll be the 112 minutes in this one, but there will be goals because, of course, there will be. So why the hell not 3-3?
3-3, right? Okay, Glenn.
Yeah, agree with everything that's been said so far. I'm quite optimistic. I think, obviously, Argyle got a very good home record, as Joe has mentioned. I don't think you'll have played a team with as much attack and flair as we've got at the moment. So that'll be an interesting test for your defence. We haven't got a clean sheet in us, so there's no way there won't be goals. So with all that, as we've had an Argyle win and a draw, so far from you two, I'll have a Saints win 3-2.
Okay, Alfie, are you confident?
Yeah, I think more so now that I'm so excited for the game now listening to Joe, but I think I'm actually more confident that if you try and play, no, it's not the Russell Martin way, but if you try and play the Russell Martin way against this Southampton team, I do think this Southampton will win that. And I was going to go 3-2, but I was giving you a free set piece goal, and listening to what you said about your set piece proficiency, I'm going to take that free set piece goal away and make it 3-1.
3-1. All right. I've gone for 2-1. So we'll see. And if you're watching live, by the way, just by all means, stick your predictions and your
0-0 it is then.
It will be 0-0 now. As soon as I started saying that, it's going to be 0-0. Joe, thanks for joining us. Enjoy the season, and hopefully we'll catch up with you later in the year.
Cheers, gents. Thank you.
Cheers, Joe. Joe joining us there to preview this weekend's game. There was one other game this week, which I don't want to spend too much time talking about, but we were dumped out of the Carabao Cup after that 3-1 first round defeat to Gillingham. Glenn, did this tell us anything we didn't already know?
No. No, it told us that our backup players are largely awful. And as soon as I saw the lineup, I mean, apart from the fact you couldn't really work out who the hell was playing where until the game kicked off. We thought we either had someone strange playing centre back or we had someone strange playing full back. It turned out it was Perot, who I didn't even think was fit, pressed into action as a centre back. And no, it was predictably awful, as it would be when you've got 6 or 7 players who you know are either not good enough or not bothered. So no, I wasn't remotely surprised. We were terrible. I do think there was a bit of an overreaction to it. I think people who paid money and went to the game have a right to be angry about it. But you do always know that in a Carabao Cup, there's
you
always
run the
chance
risk that
you
it's
run the
gonna be a
risk
change 11.
of that happening. But I understand the people who went to the game being angry, but everyone else should have been able to sort of seen the bigger picture a little bit there. And the bigger picture is, of course, that getting promoted is the priority this year. And unlike when we were in the Premier League, we're not going to not have the remotest chance of winning it or getting to the final or anything like that. So I wasn't bothered, wasn't surprised. There were some shockingly awful performances that were just even beyond my expectation. Musa Djenepo was awful. Alex McCarthy was horrendous. That the second goal is just it's unbelievable. I'm 54. I'd get down quicker than that. I wouldn't get up again afterwards, but I would have got down quicker than that. That was just dreadful. And it's, as Steve was saying last week, he's a guy who he doesn't fit the way we want to play. He doesn't look bothered. And if Roy Hodgson is stuck in some sort of time warp, didn't he pick him for England once?
Yeah,
Hodgson who picked him for England.
I think so.
Yeah,
was that like Fraser Forster as well, wasn't it? It's strange all the time, but
but I mean, if Hodgson still thinks McCarthy's a good goalkeeper, then you go on, you go for it, Roy. But I mean, we're 3-0 down, and it looked like it was going to be really embarrassing, didn't it, for a while? And then we put on a couple of good players, and one of them scored. So Alcaraz scored. Didn't think I'd see Tall Paul in his Saints shirt again, so that was interesting, but he didn't really do anything. So it was just a case of, I think once we went 2-0 down, and it was 3-0 down pretty soon, wasn't it? After that, it was just a case of, okay, let's get back on the bus and go home and concentrate on the games that really matter this season.
And Steve, was that just the youngsters being let down by the more experienced pros? Because they're the ones that I felt sorry for. Because although we'll say, well, we're out of the cup and we can concentrate on the league, it's the minutes and the extra games that some of the youngsters might have got going forward. That's the thing that's the biggest disappointment, I guess.
Yeah, it's frustrating because you'd want to see these players get development minutes against proper opposition. And in senior games, I mean, under 21 football is kind of not great in terms of its competitive level. It's a real mishmash of teams. The lineups change week in, week out. You've got occasional first team players dropping in just to get fit and just dominating the games, and sometimes it gets a little bit silly. I mean, we had that stupid one against Middlesbrough last season, didn't we? Where we stuck Theo Walcott and Sekou Mara in, and we won. Was it 8-0?
Yeah, Sekou scored 4, I think.
Yeah, and Walcott got a hat trick as well, and it was just silly, and unfortunately that's kind of the level that these kids are getting most of their minutes in. And so getting dumped out of the cup at the first opportunity in a game where, I mean, frankly, if you put out more of the kids, we'd have probably had a better team performance. But the fact is, you kind of always think that you need some sort of experience in that team somewhere, sort of down the spine. And actually, those are the players that have been constantly letting us down for years. So why would you keep giving them more chances? I mean, McCarthy's obviously one that we've singled out countless times before. Lianco similarly was garbage. Perot out of position. I kind of give him a little bit of a pass on that. If you play, I mean, the guy's not played any games in pre-season, and you're throwing him into this one where he's had no preparation really, and you're going to play him in a position he's never played before, and he's 5'6" against a League Two team who are quite good from set pieces. It's just lunacy. And I mean, Martin said after the game, didn't he, that he was proud of the performances of the kids, and it was the senior players who let them down. And while he is right, but he's the guy that picked them.
Yeah.
I think he picked them to see, what performance they would give.
It was definitely a carrot and stick approach. It was right. Are you guys actually going to be turning up for me this season? And he's got a very definitive answer there.
We talked, Alfie, when we talked about the James Ward-Prowse thing, we talked about the honesty from Russell Martin and the fact that he was absolutely upfront with you and those questions. It felt to me one of the highlights of the Tuesday game and going out the cup was his honesty afterwards. You thought, is he going to come out? Is he going to defend the players? No, he didn't hold back.
No, he didn't. And did you know what? I was just writing up the report, whatever it was I was doing, and about 2 minutes maybe after the game, he'd already come out from the dressing room and he was ready to do his media stuff. So I don't know what he said to them when he was in there, but I can't imagine it was very long. It's probably
just a couple of words.
You're not playing, and then came out. But he came out, and yeah, he was honest. And I think the quote that I tweeted that everyone sort of sent going around was, there are a lot of players in there who think they're Premier League players. They're not if they perform like that, if they don't run the yards, don't put the effort in, all that sort of stuff. And he's absolutely right. And I agree with Steve. I actually felt for Roman a little bit because I felt it wasn't really his position, and he's the one that didn't make the squad this weekend out of all of them. And obviously Paul and Matthew as well. But yeah, and there's a few there that Russell wasn't very happy with.
James Bree looked pretty upset afterwards as well, that interview that you did with him.
Yeah, it was weird actually speaking to him, because I thought it was from the media perspective, I thought it was a terrible choice to bring James Bree out just because he'd had a really bad game. He's had a really hard time of it in the last 6 months, and then all of a sudden he's out here answering loads of questions about why he wasn't very good, which I didn't think was fair on him. But yeah, he was. One thing he didn't say was that he didn't say he definitely wants to be here this season. He said that he wants to play games, and if he doesn't play games this season, then maybe he'll have to go somewhere else, which I thought was interesting. Yeah, but he's a lovely guy.
On that note, though, just before we wrap up tonight, what kind of things are you expecting this week? Maybe, obviously, the Prowsey stuff at the time of recording on a Sunday night has not been confirmed. So are you expecting that to be early tomorrow and the Flynn Downs move coming?
Yeah, I imagine they'll both be tomorrow or Tuesday. You'd like to think, and I would like to see something else happen. They've got a load of money in the bank, and I would just like to see them spend it. But there's nothing I've heard that's particularly close. When I asked Russell on Thursday or Friday, he said the same thing. There's nothing actually that close. So hopefully he's just bluffing us, and they'll be Paul Jolper out the bag tomorrow morning.
Well, they kept the Manning one was pretty undercover, wasn't it? They kept that one. Glen,
he's a free agent, I suppose.
It seems to be people going out at the moment. ABK is the other one this week, so it'd be nice to see somebody coming in.
Yeah, nice to see Romeo Lavia go anywhere other than Liverpool. Obviously, hopefully the Brighton lad will go to anywhere other than Liverpool as well. Bit disappointed Chelsea didn't announce them both on the pitch before the game today, but there you go. So yeah, obviously Lavia will be moving as well, but it will be it will be good to get some more in. But yeah, I can see it taking a bit of time. I mean, where do we really need to strengthen? I mean, if we accept we're not going to sign a goalkeeper, we've brought in Joanna Lumley, haven't we? But we're not going to sign a first choice goalkeeper. Midfield now seems to be sorted with Flynn Downs. I guess it's centre back. I guess more competition in the centre back area.
If all our centre backs are going to be getting booked every game, we're going to need more.
Yeah, absolutely. That's the other thing that came from yesterday.
The only thing that came out yesterday was Armel Bella-Kotchap going to Dortmund for 20 million euros. I mean, I text somebody quite close to Armel and quite close to those sort of deals, and he responded with, at that price, they should buy two of them. So I get the impression that 20 million euros is not going to be the fee. I think it'll be slightly more than that.
But it could be done.
Yeah. Well, maybe we'll see. And
you've got to look at. I mean, the other area you should probably look at is centre forward, but I guess that depends on whether Che moves on or not. But I mean, the thing that I found interesting from the Gillingham interview you mentioned there with Russell Martin is that there was a lot of general references to players not playing well, but there was a very pointed one at Sekumara, wasn't there, about basically not training properly, not training with the intensity that you need to go into a game and perform. So it wouldn't surprise me if he's moved out on loan or permanently even. Just because, I mean, to have made that impression on your new manager after 6 weeks is not great, is it? So it'd be interesting to see what happens there, and maybe we'll bring in another forward because of that.
Well, that's pretty much it for this week's episode. Don't forget you can follow Total Saints Podcast. We're on Facebook and Twitter. It's at Total Saints Pod. We're also on Instagram. We're giving Threads a go as well. It's at Total Saints Podcast if you're on there. As you'll know, if you're watching the podcast on Sunday evenings, we live stream TSP every week to our Facebook, Twitter, Twitch and YouTube. And if you're watching on YouTube, don't forget to subscribe to be the first to see all of the new videos. It's also great to hear from you during the week. You can drop us a DM on any of the socials or you can drop us an email via the the website if there's something you'd like to share. As I mentioned right at the start, we're also on Patreon. That's where you can support the podcast with your monthly contribution. It's patreon.com/Total Saints Podcast. There's 4 different tiers on there, ranging from £5 to £20 per month, and each of the tiers comes with different perks. One of those is a weekly shout out for the patrons in the Francis Benali and the Mick Shannon tier. So thank you for your ongoing support to Dave Melton, Mark Atkins, Matt Hall, Andy Hollis, Anthony Thompson, and Saints in Exile. They're in our Francis Benali tier. And also to Colt Baker, Dave Ernsberger, Ed Busy, Nick Higston, Phil Cook, Matt Rose, and Nick Reed in the Mick Shannon tier. Thank you to Steve and to Glenn and to Alfie. Thank you for watching. Thank you for listening. And we'll see you again next week.